In the quiet edge of a forgotten road stood a house no one really noticed. The shutters were always half closed, the paint long faded into the gray of time, and every gust of wind sent tiny clouds of wood dust curling out through the cracks in the door. Inside that house lived Elias, a man with silver in his beard and silence in his bones. No one remembered when he moved in. He didn't wave when people passed, didn't speak at the market. But every morning, just as the light broke through the trees, the steady sound of carving echoed faintly from behind his walls. Tap, scrape, breath, pause, tap again. Elias wasn't a craftsman by trade, not anymore. He once built boats, big ones, with curved ribs and sun-bleached decks. His hands used to hold the weight of oceans. Now they held scraps of cedar and oak, carving things small enough to fit in a pocket, but deep enough to carry sorrow. He never sold them, just placed them on the windowsill, where the wind could carry the scent of wood into the world. One morning, a boy from the village, no more than 12, wandered close, chasing a stray kite. He paused, staring through the slats. What he saw made him still. Elias shaping a block of wood into the form of a hand. Fingers open, reaching, unfinished. The boy didn't speak. He just watched. And Elias, after a long moment, nodded toward a stool. No words, just invitation. If stories like this whisper something to your heart, subscribe to Wood Carving Artist. Beck, Wood Carving. At first, the boy didn't speak, and neither did Elias. The air between them was filled with the soft percussion of tools, the rasping of the file, the hush of sandpaper, the distant creak of an old beam stretching with age. On the second week, Elias handed the boy a small block of pine. Nothing fancy, just enough grain to feel alive. He didn't say what to do with it, just placed it in his hands and waited. The boy turned it over slowly, then again, until finally he took a dull carving knife and made the first cut. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was real. And that was enough. Over the next few afternoons, they carved side by side. One made birds. The other tried to copy wings. One carved hands. The other shaped fingers that curled too tight. But Elias never corrected, only watched. And every now and then smiled with the corner of his eyes. The silence between them became something sacred, like a language older than words, spoken in the way wood curled when coaxed, or how the boy now swept dust before it gathered. If these quiet spaces feel like home to you, subscribe to Wood Carving Artist. Here, we honor the unspoken things, the gestures, the grain. One evening, after the sun had dipped low, the boy pointed to a carving on the highest shelf. It was a wooden lantern, finely detailed, hollow in the middle, with no candle inside. He raised an eyebrow, curious. Elias looked at it for a long time, then whispered, "Light doesn't always come from fire." That was all, and the boy understood. The next morning, when he returned, a second stool had been added near the workbench. No one mentioned it, but it was there, and it stayed. If you believe some of the best stories are the ones carved slowly, with patience, with presence, then Wood Carving Artist is your place. Subscribe and sit with us a while. It happened just before noon, when the light filtered in at that perfect angle. Soft, golden, almost like dust itself had turned to sunlight. The boy, now comfortable enough to work alone, was carving a small horse. Its legs were thin, too thin. Elias had noticed, but he said nothing, letting the boy discover limits the same way he had, not from books, but from breakage. And break it did. The blade snapped mid-curve, a sharp ping breaking the silence, followed by the boy's gasp. He dropped the knife, staring at the jagged edge like he'd shattered something sacred. Elias turned. His face was unreadable. He walked over, picked up the broken blade, and ran a thumb across its fracture. Then he smiled. "Now you'll remember," he said. Not with anger, not with blame, just truth. He reached into an old drawer and pulled out another knife. Older, worn, smooth, its handle dark from years of palms and sweat. He handed it over slowly. "This one belonged to my teacher. Broke it twice myself." The boy took it with reverence. His hands shook just slightly. That day, he didn't carve. He just sat, watching Elias repair the broken blade, heating, reshaping, sanding it down until it wasn't new, but it was whole. "Tools don't stay sharp forever," Elias said, his voice quiet, "but sometimes they carry more after they've broken once." If you've ever felt like a piece of you snapped under pressure, but still found a way to keep shaping beauty from it, Wood Carving Artist is your space. Subscribe and carve with us through the imperfect moments too. That afternoon, the boy asked his first question. "Did you ever want to stop carving?" Elias didn't answer right away. He placed the broken blade into a box lined with old shavings, a kind of resting place. "Yes," he said, "but then my hands kept moving anyway." Sometimes the most valuable lessons aren't about the wood, but about the hands that return to it, even after they've failed. If that speaks to something inside you, subscribe to Wood Carving Artist. Because we're not here to carve perfectly. We're here to keep carving together. It was a Thursday, unusually cold for early spring. The usual scent of cedar in Elias's shop was overtaken by something heavier, a perfume of the past. The boy noticed it first, the way Elias paused mid-cut, eyes fixed on the doorway before the knock ever came. And then 3 slow taps. Not hesitant, not rushed. Elias didn't move right away, just wiped his blade, set it down, and let out a breath he must have been holding for years. When he opened the door, she stood there, weathered hat, long gray coat, boots that had traveled far. Her name was Nora. She didn't have to say it. The way Elias's shoulders folded, just slightly, told the boy everything. Not anger, not fear, just history. "Still carving?" she asked. Elias nodded. "Still running?" She smiled, thin and sad. "Not anymore." They spoke like people who once built something together and watched it fall. The boy, unsure, stepped back. But Elias motioned for him to stay. "He's learning," he said. Nora's eyes softened. "Then he's lucky. If you've ever wondered how time can both heal and wound, this part of the story is for you. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist, where even old scars carve meaning." Nora didn't stay long. She walked the room quietly, pausing at certain carvings. Her fingers hovered, but never touched. At the back wall, she found a small wooden box, locked, dusty. Elias followed her gaze. "I never opened it," he said. "Didn't have the right." Nora reached into her coat and pulled out a tiny key. The boy turned away politely, sensing something sacred. When he looked again, the box was open, and Elias held something inside, a small, unfinished figure of a woman. One hand missing, but carved with aching care. No one said anything. The silence spoke enough. Later, after she left, Elias sat longer than usual. The boy brought him tea, placed it beside the workbench. "She was the reason I stopped," Elias whispered, "and the reason I started again. If you believe that stories return, that hands reunite not always to fix, but to remember, subscribe to Wood Carving Artist. Some carvings, after all, take a lifetime." The next day, Elias brought out a plank the boy had never seen before. It was darker than the others, old mahogany, rough on the outside, with scars that ran across its grain like riverbeds. He placed it gently on the table, as if it were alive or sacred. The boy waited for instructions, but Elias simply ran his hand along the surface, eyes distant. "This wood came from my father's boat," he said, voice barely a whisper. "It sank off Camiguin when I was just a boy. We recovered a few planks. I kept this one." He paused. "Didn't touch it for 40 years. The boy looked at the wood again, really looked. The cracks, the worn knots, the faded smell of salt. "Why now?" he asked. Elias didn't answer at first. Then he reached for a pencil and sketched softly on the wood's surface. A face. Nora's. Because not everything broken is lost. Some things wait to be remembered. That day, Elias carved slowly, reverently. Each stroke peeled away not just wood, but years. His hands trembled more than usual, but he didn't stop. And the boy, he didn't speak. He watched. He learned. If you've ever held on to something for years, not knowing why, not ready to let it go, this story is for you. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist. Sometimes, what's carved isn't just wood. It's memory. As the face took shape, the room felt heavier, quieter. The boy could sense it. Not grief, but gratitude. As if Elias, in carving her likeness, was returning something to time itself. By dusk, only the outline was done. Elias sat back, hands in his lap. "She helped me believe I could make beauty without building ships," he said. That carving, small, was still meaningful. He looked at the boy, the same way a father might look at a son. "She told me that before she left, decades ago." The boy reached for the sanding cloth. Without a word, he began smoothing the edges, together, in silence, in respect, in remembrance. If you feel the weight of stories inside you, stories you haven't yet spoken, let them carve their way out gently. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist. The grain remembers, and so do we. It started with a quiet suggestion from the boy, one afternoon as they were oiling old carvings. "What if we made something for the square?" he asked. Elias didn't answer right away. His eyes wandered toward the window, where the narrow road led into the village. For years, that road brought in no visitors, no questions, no requests. But lately, a few faces had paused, peeking in, curious. A mother with a stroller, a man with a camera, and now, a question from a boy who used to be silent. Elias nodded slowly. "We'll need something big," he said, "but not loud. The next day, they dragged out a thick slab of acacia, wide, gnarled, and beautiful in its imperfection. "What should it be?" the boy asked. "Not what," Elias said, "but who?" And just like that, the idea came to life. Not a monument, not a spectacle, but a tribute to the people of the village, the unseen, the forgotten, the strong. They carved a pair of hands, large, weathered, holding a seed. One hand old, with lines and age, one young, reaching up in trust. And between them, the seed, still unbroken, full of possibility. If that image speaks to you, if you believe in building more than just objects, but connections, then Wood Carving Artist is the place for you. Subscribe and carve alongside a story that's still growing. The carving took days, then weeks. Every villager who passed by left a comment, a smile, sometimes just a nod. One even brought lunch. For the first time in years, Elias worked in the open, sun on his back, and people watching without judgment. The boy noticed how Elias spoke more now. Short phrases, quick jokes. Even laughed once when a little girl called the seed a magic bean. On the day they installed it in the village square, no speech was given. No ribbon was cut. Just quiet hands lifting wood into place. And as the sun dipped low, it cast a warm light across the carving, like it had always belonged there. If you've ever felt like art could bring people together, not to impress, but to remind us we matter, subscribe to Wood Carving Artist. This isn't just a channel. It's a bench in the square, waiting for you to sit down. It was early morning when Elias handed the boy a block of teak, untouched, dense, and full of challenge. "This one's yours," he said. "No sketch, no guidance, just trust." The boy hesitated. His fingers curled around the wood like he was holding something sacred. And in a way, he was. For hours, he didn't carve. He just sat with it, felt the grain, listened to the silence it carried. Then slowly, steadily, he began. Not with grand strokes, but careful lines. Patient, deliberate. Elias didn't hover. He stayed nearby, working on something else, humming an old tune. But his presence filled the room like a steady heartbeat. As the figure took shape, the boy's confidence grew. His hands moved with a rhythm that wasn't mimicry anymore. It was memory turning into instinct. A bird emerged, not majestic, not perfect, but full of life, wings mid-flutter, as if it had just discovered it could fly. If you've ever tried something with your own hands, failed, tried again, and finally saw it come alive, this story is for you. Subscribe to Wood Carving Artist, because learning is carving, and carving is becoming. When the bird was finished, the boy didn't say a word. He placed it quietly on the same shelf where Elias kept his older works. For a long time, Elias said nothing. Then, without looking up, he murmured, "She would have liked that." The boy didn't ask who. He didn't need to. That evening, a light breeze passed through the shop, carrying sawdust and the faint scent of lemon oil. The bird, small as it was, caught the last of the sunlight and glowed. Later, Elias handed the boy a folded piece of cloth. Inside, his own carving knife, the one with the worn handle. "Yours now," he said. "It's already shaped to a good hand." The boy smiled, eyes damp. "I'll take care of it." Elias nodded. "Number, you'll use it." That's how it lives. If that touched something in you, if you believe that tools can carry not just use, but love, subscribe to Wood Carving Artist. Here, the story isn't just in the carving, it's in the hands that grow.